Hi, in this video, that is a series of videos that I'm going to make on tooth morphology. I'm going to focus in just one tooth because I see a lot of good dental technicians that do beautiful layering and in overall very good anatomy on this tooth in particular, but it has some fundamental problems. And so I decided that I was going to make a video showing the anatomy of this particular tooth to start with, and then depending on how good is received this video, I'll probably go into some others. Today we're talking about tooth number 3 on the universal system, number 16 on the Palmer system, and number 6 on the FDI system. In other terms, we're going to talk about the first molar upper arch on the right hand side of the patient. Okay, and we're going to start by talking about the general outline form of the tooth. Okay, so let's look at this tooth. It's a beautiful tooth, and I'm going to try as brief as I can. I could spend a lot of time, more than what I'm going to spend in this video, talking about this tooth because it's a very important tooth. You see that this is probably one of the ones that you restore the most in your laboratory as a single tooth. So we're going to talk about the overall shape of the tooth. So there are two shapes of the tooth. The first one is the outline of the tooth, which is the height of contour, that is the outside of the tooth on the lingual and on the palatal. Okay, on the facial, on the palatal. So, and then it comes the inside, what is referred as the occlusal table of the tooth. And I don't know if I steal that from somebody or what. I call it this the fish mouth. If I stole the term from you and you're watching this video, it was not my intention. I cannot remember, but that's how I call it because it looks like the mouth of a fish. Okay, especially when you go to the bicuspids. But anyway, so we look at the tooth, and the actual width of the tooth is the height of contour on the facial and the palatal. But then we have the width of the occlusal table. Many times I see teeth that the occlusal table and the width is about the same, and they look ridiculous. Okay, so it has a plane that the tooth curves in here. Okay, so the tooth has two cusps on the facial and two cusps on the lingual. If we look at the shape of the tooth looks like this, not like this. Okay, that I see that very often, square tooth, and it's not like that, it's like that. Okay, but if we take this tooth and I grind on all this occlusal surface, it's going to look like this. This is the facial, mesial, distal, lingual, or palatal. Okay, and if we divide it in 4, you're going to notice that the cusps are not divided in the same distribution. There are some cusps that are bigger than the others, that actually sometimes in the cusp invade the areas of the other cusp. Like we can see that the mesial cusp is bigger than the distal, that the distal on the facial aspect comes further down into the area of the lingual or palatal distal, and that the palatal is the biggest one. It takes space of pretty much every other cusp. Okay, so we come back here and we see that, okay, this cusp is bigger than this one. This one looks bigger or about the same, but it's an illusion really, because what happens is we are looking at the total width, because here comes actually the outline of the cusp and the width comes here. Okay, so then here is the distal that is smaller on the palatal, and then the biggest one that is the lingual. The lingual is not only the biggest, it's also the tallest of the four cusps. Okay, so now an important phrase on tooth anatomy is form follows function. Each one of these cusps and the triangular ridges follows a specific direction because of the function on the opposing tooth. So if we look at this cusp, the triangular ridge, that is this area, is facing that way, and many times even has a little curve. But in most cases we see the tip more toward the mesial. Okay? And the reason for that is because this cusp is exposed to three movements. To the protrusive movement, the lateral movement, and the lateral protrusive movement. So there are three movements that is exposed. So when it goes to the protrusive movement is right here, the lateral protrusive movement is here. So that's the reason why the cusp is moving toward the mesial, because there is a little bit of movement on the protrusive side when it's going into the lateral movement. And then we have this cusp that is exposed to protrusive movement, lateral movement, and retroprotrusive movement. When we have the opposing arch that is moving on this side, the tooth doesn't move like this. It moves like this, and it's also moving like this. And that's why this cusp has a little bit of orientation toward the distal. You see that? That the cusp is not something straight. It's coming a little bit from the distal, and it turns here. Okay. Then the palatal cusp, the mesial palatal cusp, is exposed to protrusive movement, lateral protrusive movement this way, and the lateral movement. Okay, and that's why this cusp, if you look at the cusp, the triangular ridge is a little bit concave. It has a little bit of concavity. It goes inside. It's not as high as the others. Okay. So the distal then, it is exposed to the lateral movement that way and the protrusive movement in just a small amount. And that's why it's low right here for the protrusive movement of the cusp in the opposite side. Okay, and then a little bit of protrusive movement this way. And is the lowest cusp of the four of them. The mesial cusp and the distal cusp, in many instances, the distal cusp is higher than the mesial. And here we have a good example of that. See, this one, the mesial is higher than the distal. The distal is higher than the mesial. And look at how high the palatal is. Okay. You can see they do not send out, because whenever I see a case that I like the anatomy, I get a new impression. That's the way that we can learn anatomy, by looking at different models. And we think that we know the shape of teeth, and whenever we are working on a case, I like to get models out and look which one looks like the anatomy that I have next to it, and I use that anatomy and I copy it like artists do. Artists, they don't make bodies out of memory. They don't make portraits out of memory, although they could do it. No, they use live models to do that. So there is an order when we are building the teeth, and when we are going to wax them, or the order in which they develop. See, the grooves, these grooves that we see here, they are not scratches on the teeth. They are formed by one cusp or triangular ridge getting close to the other one and created that groove. Okay, and then there is a secondary anatomy that goes on top of that and creates another ridge, like I'm doing here with my finger. I'm creating a ridge just by putting my finger, and there are ridges here. It's not that I made a line over there. It's just by two things that are rounded coming together. Okay, so it's like mountains create the mountains together. Is when they create the rivers. So there is an order and a sequence to build the teeth. First comes the mesial cusp. And the mesial cusp, as we were seeing earlier, is going to invade a little bit of this area and a little bit of this area of the mesial, of the distal cusp and the lingual cusp. Okay. Then we build the distal facial cusp. This one is going to be higher on this way than the mesial. See? And that's what many of you are thinking about right now, and is the oblique ridge. Yes, sir. So the oblique ridge is the one that is formed by these two areas. Okay? And I'm not mentioning it right now because we're going to go into that exactly. So the cusp or the triangular ridge comes a little bit right here on the distal of the triangular ridge, comes toward the distal, but here comes a little bit toward the mesial. And it is not completely straight. And let's not forget always, this is not a two-dimensional, this is three-dimensional. And we have to keep in mind the height of each one of them. That's very important for the function. If we fabricate a tooth that is following all the aspects of the function, we're going to have a beautiful tooth. I'm not talking just the function of the opposite arch. I'm talking about the function of mastication, the speech function, and the support of the cheeks and the support of the lips. Okay, so now the distal palatal cusp is more like a big blob that comes right here, and then we have the lingual or palatal mesial cusp that, as I said, is the biggest one. Okay, and is the tallest one. And make sure that you make this incline here, because this incline is the one, the pathway for the lateral protrusive movement that happens with the opposing tooth. That's how the opposing cusp can get out in that movement. Okay. So we build first. I start when I'm doing it. I start building all the outline, creating the fish mouth, and then start putting each one of the cusps. I built my fish mouth with the cusp tips on the position that they need to be, and then I start building the cusps. Then after I build the cusp, and you're going to notice that, let me all get this in focus, that the secondary anatomy gets on top of that, okay? We can see here, for example, in the secondary anatomy of this triangular ridge or this cusp, that it goes on top, okay? This right here is part of the mesial facial cusp, and this is the secondary anatomy. And this one is really important, okay? We see it here on this tooth, okay? And the importance of this one is because if you look at teeth, most of the time, here is where the occlusion takes place of the opposing cusp tip. And that cusp tip rides right here in the protrusive movement. So this is a very important secondary anatomy. And it helps to clear everything out of the occlusion, okay? But again, it's on top. And this one is right here on top of this one. So first is the big triangular ridge, and then the secondary anatomies are the ones that form the rest. The same thing happened with the distal. See how this secondary anatomy is on top of this one, of this triangular ridge, and is on top of the secondary anatomy of the mesial cusp. Then we come to put the secondary anatomy on the marginal ridge. Then the secondary anatomy of the distal lingual or palatal cusp. Then this secondary anatomy without the bubble on the mesial of the palatal cusp tip. This one, and here is the very important that I was going to talk about. This that makes the oblique ridge. This is secondary anatomy of the cusp, and it starts taking a turn many times and comes down here. See that? On top of the cusp and on top of the triangular ridge of the distal facial cusp. And look at this. The distal facial cusp, as I was showing in the paper, it invades this area. That's very important to make it look natural. Let me show you again the piece of paper. Look, it comes here. It invades that area. And it's not straight. I see it all the time that it's a straight thing. It's not straight. It comes from the mesial facial, comes up, and then it turns a little bit here. And this is not very noticeable, but here is the finishing of the triangular ridge. Okay. So now here there are some other very important aspects of this tooth. Okay. This opening right here is not an accident. This opening allows for the food to get out of there without being trapped in the papilla. When dentists ask for very broad contacts because they don't want to get food to be trapped, that's what they are asking for, a food trap. Because when you're bringing this out, food is going to get locked right here. Okay? You can have a broad contact from this area to the area of contact. But if you come and you make this squarish to give it a more broad contact, put something here and try to get it out going up. You won't. So you want that when you're looking from here, you can see the papilla right here. The same on the distal. Look at that. This cusp right here is rounded. Same happens here. Look how rounded this one is. Letting the food come out. The design of this is perfect. And all these things. What is the purpose of all this secondary anatomy? Okay. If I get a cusp that is like this, a flat cusp, and I come here and I get food and I start biting on it, what is going to happen? I'm going to compact that food over there. That food is going to be compacted. But what if that has a shape like a tip? The food is going to be squeezed out this way through these channels. The food is going to come out also through these areas from the fossas. Okay, so when you're building your teeth, think on all those little details that actually are really important part of the tooth. Lastly, this is a non-functional cusp, and many patients don't have it. If you put it and the patient don't have it, probably the dentist is going to ask you to remove it. So I don't put it unless I see it in the adjacent tooth or the contralateral side. Now, here is another very important thing. Not all the teeth are the same. It really bothers me when I see that laboratories use the same library for every single case, because not all the teeth are the same. So I'm looking at this case, okay, and if I'm going to restore this tooth, I'm going to look at this one, and I'm going to look at the anatomy of this one. This one has a lot of secondary anatomy. So a tooth with a lot of secondary anatomy like this one, it will fit over there. Now, that molar on this arch wouldn't work. See, this one, for example, doesn't have a lot of secondary anatomy. It has just a big blob of a triangular ridge, a little bit of secondary anatomy here, a little bit here. This one is just one triangular ridge, and we see here on the adjacent tooth, very little secondary anatomy, just primary anatomy. Okay, so here we can see what I was talking about of the teeth overlaying each other and the order of the teeth. You see that even on the facial, this one is overlaying this one. Here on the lingual, this one is overlaying this one. Okay, we see it here and we see it here. We can talk a lot about the texture and the forms on the facial. I'm not going into that. I just want you guys to grab models. Look at different models in your laboratory when you get cases coming in. Take natural teeth. Ask your dentist, hey, can you please give me some natural teeth? And have natural teeth laying around. I have natural teeth laying around, and whenever I have a case, I just grab something and I just look at the adjacent teeth and try to copy. These are natural teeth that I put on this model. Okay, so I can copy whenever I need. Okay, I will leave you guys with a story. I've been a dental technician for 20 something years. I started in orthodontics, and I was the first on my class. I graduated with honors. I had a scholarship because of my achievements. And when I came to the United States, I took a ceramic course. And this was the crown that I made. I was so proud because I thought that this anatomy was so amazing. See, I was the best in anatomy in my class. Okay, so I came to the instructor and I said, what do you think? And he said, he looked at it and he got the question back to me. He said, what do you think? And I needed to be humble. So I said, I think that it could be improved a little bit. And he said, yeah, I think that it can be improved a little bit. 20 years later, I wouldn't put this crown in my enemy's mouth. It's just through observation and looking at the details and making our minds that the teeth are tridimensional and there are so many little details that make them look better. But basically, the important aspect is the function. When I try to get the right function, I'm going to come up with a good tooth. And as I said, is the function of the occlusal aspect against the other tooth, the mastication, being able to clean itself, the cleanliness of the tooth, the support of the tissues, not just the cheeks and the lips when we talk about the front teeth, but also the support of the tissue around with the right emergence profile. As I said, I could go longer on this tooth, just on this one, but we'll leave it like that, okay? And eventually I will show you guys a picture of one of my wax apps or one of my build-ups posterior anatomy. And thank you so much for watching, for sticking out with me through the end. Thank you for coping with my accent, and I hope that you have learned something and you have enjoyed the video. Bye.